John Gill, Exposition of the entire Bible verse by verse, brought to you by Discovering the Scriptures, being read by Dr. Peter John. Reading the verse from the King James Bible first, quote, "And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive," unquote. John Gill, quote, "And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, of the city of Smyrna, see my writings on Revelation chapter 1, verse 11. That there was a church of Christ here is not to be doubted, though by whom it was founded is not certain. Very likely by Apostle Paul, who was in those parts, and by whose means all Asia heard the gospel of Christ." Acts 19:10. Some think the present angel or pastor of this church was Polycarp, the disciple of John. Irenaeus, who knew him, says he was appointed bishop of Smyrna by the apostles. Here he suffered martyrdom and was buried. The large amphitheater in which he was put to death is still to be seen, and his scepter is yet preserved in this place. The very famous epistle sent by this church at Smyrna to the churches at Pontus, giving an account of the martyrdom of Polycarp and others, is extant in Eusebius. According to the Apostolic Constitution, the first bishops of Smyrna were Aristo and then Strataeus, and Aristo II, and Apelles, that's Apelles, of whom mention is made in Romans 16, verse 10, and who is reckoned among the 70 disciples. See my writings on Luke 10, verse 1. And is said to be the bishop of Smyrna before Polycarp. Who succeeded Polycarp I do not find, but it is said there was a church at Smyrna in the 3rd century, and so there was in the beginning of the 4th, since there was a bishop from hence in the council at Nice, and in the 5th century mention is made of several bishops of this place, as of Cyrus, a native of Constantinople, and Protheus, that's Protherius, who is thought succeeded him and was present in the synod at Chalcedon, Chalcedon, and Aetherius, who assisted at 3 synods in his century, at Constantinople, Chalcedon. And in the 6th century, there is a bishop in Smyrna in the 5th synod held at Rome and Constantinople, and even in the 8th century, one Anthony, a monk, supplied the place of the bishop of Smyrna in the Nicene Synod. The Turks here have in this place now 13 mosques, and Jews 2 synagogues, and the Christians here, there are 2 churches belonging to the Greeks and 1 to the Armenians. The church and its pastor represent the state of the church under the persecution of the Roman emperors. Smyrna signifies mirth, which being bitter of taste is expressive of the bitter afflictions and persecutions and death. The people of God in this interval endured, and yet, as mirth is of a sweet smell, so were those saints in their sufferings for Christ, exceeding grateful and well-pleasing to him. Wherefore nothing is said by way of complaint to this church, not that she was without fault, but it was proper to use her tenderly in her afflicted state. And as Dr. Moore observes, as mirth was used in the embalming of dead bodies, it may point to the many deaths and martyrdoms of the saints in this period, whereby their names and memories are perpetuated and eternalized. These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. On these characters of Christ, see my writings on Revelations chapter 1, verse 8, Revelations 1, verse 11, Revelations 1, verse 17 and 18, and they are very appropriately mentioned to encourage the saints under their sufferings of death, since Christ, who is the eternal God, had in human nature tasted of the bitterness of death for them and was risen again, suggesting that though they were called to undergo the bitterest deaths for his sake, they should be raised again as he was and live with him forever. The Ethiopic version reads, quote, "Thus saith the Holy Spirit," unquote. But it cannot be said of him that he was dead. And of John Gill, Revelation chapter 2, verse 8. The verse again, the King James Bible, quote, "And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive," unquote. And of John Gill, Revelation chapter 2, verse 8.